He's a first-time coach, so that means we don't got to worry about the, oh, no coach has won it with two different teams whole thing, if you believe in that. But getting to your point on team building, because that's where I wanted to go with this. When you look at the 2025 Dallas Cowboys as they currently stand, this team, if they, and I said this, I want to say in the first or second show we did, I said they are forced to spend money this year. I'm not saying it has to be like a ridiculous amount of money. They have to, because their roster, if they did nothing, if they don't do anything, it's going to be even worse next year. Like, I'm looking, and I think they're going to re-sign some guys. Right here, here's what I'm seeing. You right now have no backup quarterback, aside from Will Grier, I think on a futures contract. You have no running backs outside of Deuce Vaughn and Hunter Lipke. You have no wide receivers outside of Tolbert, Lamb, and Mingo, if you want to go like that. Tight end, you have Ferguson and Luke Schoonmaker. Your entire offensive line is going to need a whole lot more depth. Your defensive line, you're going to look to lose Osa Odigizua unless you pay him. And also, by the way, DeMarcus Lawrence is out the door, which I'm not saying he's all that anymore, but I'm just saying, like, you're losing these dudes. And then you go to your linebacker situation. You're not going to have DeMarvin Overshown for 2025 for the most part. And you're most likely going to lose Eric Kendricks. Your defensive backs, again, you're losing guys there. And be like, oh, but space, it's okay. Like, they're going to figure. No, because this is the problem, is they're not being proactive. And I think that's where I don't want to hear this shit of, well, Dak Prescott signed on it. Bro, what the hell do you want him to do? Do you want him to be like, all right, bro, like, fuck this dude. I don't want him on my team. He's not going to do that, bro. Everybody knows Dak's a company guy. He's not going to try and rock the boat. Also, I want to be very clear. He wanted Mike McCarthy to stay. He wanted Mike McCarthy to stay. So if we're going off of that, then he didn't want Brian Schottenheimer. He's it's like a Stockholm syndrome. We're forced to go along with it. And I want to be very clear, too. If I'm not trying to sit here and say that Dak is perfect. I'm not trying to give him like any excuse. All I am saying is that we should not be giving the front office a pass for their bullshit. And I don't care what anybody tells me. If you're going to try and tell me that Dak Prescott's a playoff choker, okay, fine. I don't really care. But here's my thing. This front office elected to pay him. This front office elected to go get a new coach. This front office did jack shit to build on what they did. And this is where looking at what happened on Championship Sunday, I know I'm getting a bit long-winded, but also to kind of talk about this because this is a huge point. On Championship Sunday, you saw the teams that advanced to the Super Bowl. They do things in common, which is they understand their situations and they build upon that. The Eagles went to the Super Bowl in 2022. Did they just sit there and go like, all right, guys, we're done. We're going to have to tear this thing down? No. They went through 2023. They had that collapse where they were 10-1. They had arguably a fantasy, they were on the route to do what they did the last year. They just fell apart because of emotional turmoil. And also their coordinators were not good. They replaced their coordinators. They didn't just sit back and like, all right, guys, we're going to just, no, they replaced their coordinators. They went out and got Saquon Barkley to what you said, B. They got Saquon. Not only that, they added guys like Zach Bond. They went and they drafted a bunch of dudes that were productive players for them. And they didn't force these young dudes to step in and have to be like, guys, if you can't step in, we're screwed. And that's where I get mad because it's that gets you to championships and possibly wins championships. The Cowboys have done none of that. So that's where, from this show, I want to be very clear. From this point moving forward, I'm defending Brian Schottenheimer. He is the coach. I want him to succeed. I'm not going to want him to not succeed just for my point to be correct. Dak Prescott, I want him to succeed. I'm not saying you're saying this to beat or anybody else in the chat is thinking what I'm saying. What I'm just getting at is from this point forward, you, the front office, need to back up this dude. That being Brian Schottenheimer. If you do not, damn shame. And, and I want to be very clear. I know Brian's dad passed away a couple years ago. I know he'd be damn proud to see his son be a head coach of a team, let alone the Cowboys. And I think that that's something that people forget in all this. But I'm going to end my soliloquy here that is where they're at. They need to get behind him. And if they don't get behind him, this shit don't work. And it hasn't worked.
And one real quick, by the way, that press conference is actually at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So
okay.
Yeah, that's going to be a little difficult because I got something to do at around 1 o'clock. But
honestly, it's probably going to be boring, and we're going to probably hear the same shit.
Yeah. So we'll talk about it at another time. But hey, look, you hit on a lot of the points that I was built that some of the points that I was saying, and you added a different layer of context to it, which I greatly appreciate. And to turn this into let's stop, going at the Jones, even though they absolutely deserve it. And let's start talking about what this realistically could look like and how this can work. One thing I want to start off by saying is this, right? I want this team to get an identity. I don't care what that identity looks like. If it's, hey, we're going to build out our defensive line and we're going to be really physical on our defensive line, I'm not mad at it. You want to build out your offensive line, be more physical there. Not mad at it. If you want to run the football, go draft an offensive lineman and go get a badass running back. I'm not mad at it. But get an identity, something that you can go into Sundays and say, this is what we're going to build our game plan around. Is it running the football and building play action off it? Again, like if you do that, the need for like a badass number 2 receiver, I'm not saying it's not there. It absolutely is, but it's not as important as it would be if you were saying, hey, we're going to lean on the passing attack. Because if that's the case, you need like Minnesota Viking level receivers with, Jefferson, Addison, and Naylor, and Hawkinson, and guys like that. But if you say, hey, we're going to run the ball and build play action off that, and that's what we're going to build our offense off of, it's not like Detroit has elite receivers all around the field. Jamison Williams is a very good player. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a very good slot receiver. And, they kind of build it like that. Sam Laporta. But, their quarterback played very well this year because of the fact that they had a legitimate structure to their offense and they didn't really ask their quarterback to do much. I don't believe you're at that liberty with Dak Prescott. I think that you can build a really good structure of an offense with Dak, and when needed, he can make plays out of structure. I think that's the difference between a guy like Dak and Jared Goff, in my personal opinion. But, that's the thing. Get an identity, get that thing where you're like, we're going to win because of this. And let's rock out, because right now, what is this team? What can you say this team does very well? You could say their passing attack. I disagree with that because they don't have the receivers for that. They don't have the offensive line for that either when it comes to holding up and pass protection. They can't do that because, when Jalen Tolbert is your number 2 receiver, I'm sorry, you're going to struggle. You're just going to, when we're ranking number 2 receivers, where is he on that list? Maybe 30, 29, somewhere around that area. Just not good enough. It's not good enough. And they got to do something here. And, I'm sure we'll talk about the draft. Whatever way you want to stack this thing where you're like, hey, we'll draft the running back in round 1 and we'll go with a Trey Harris, somebody like that in the second round from Ole Miss. Or if you want to draft a receiver in round 1 and we can go draft one of the running backs in round 2, or if you want to draft an offensive lineman, then draft a running back, whatever it may be, just get an identity and stick to that damn identity and win games because of your identity. And then in following off seasons, continue to build out the rest of your team. That's the way I look at that.
And, I want to hone in on that. That is a fantastic point. This Cowboys team, bro, we've said it for years. This team hasn't had an identity. Like when Kellen Moore was the OC here, it was the what the hell are we doing offense, the no identity offense. It was like either one day we're very pass heavy or one day we're very run heavy. It was so inconsistent, right? But also not even just offensively. Defensively, it was like, what are we, right? Are we a team now under Dan Quinn? We were a team that gets a lot of turnovers, but we just couldn't get crucial stops. Okay, that's fine. But this is where I look at it, right? Like Martyball. If you're an NFL fan, you know what the hell I'm talking about. Marty Schottenheimer, this was his identity. Run, pass, run, just run the ball and be hard-nosed when it comes to the defense. That has always been the build of Marty's teams, and he was wildly successful even in the early 2000s. Now, people will be like, that's an outdated philosophy. Now, my thing is that we've seen just recently the Eagles, you can look at the Chiefs from the 2023 season. You can go to the 2022 season. You can also point to the Eagles and the Chiefs as well. Teams that run the ball well and stop the run win championships. Point blank, period.
It's not that hard.
It's not that difficult, but the problem is that the Cowboys don't want to lean into that, right? They want to act like they're so cheap they can't. So here's the thing, right? The Cowboys, what did we know them in the late Romo era and the early Dak era? They ran the ball a lot, but their defense wasn't good, right? They ran the ball a lot because they didn't want their defense to be tired. Well, your defense is way more talented than it is those years. And I think this is where I wouldn't be shocked if they took another offensive lineman in round one. They could be sitting there and be like, yo, we could get a badass lineman. And whether you agree with it or not, I don't want them to just take an offensive lineman in the first round just for the sake of taking an offensive lineman. They need to do better at getting value guys. Like looking at, I believe it is the Bills. The Bills had no guy on that offensive line that was a first round pick. And they were still doing great, right? I think for the Cowboys, granted they got young guys, right? I think that you're fine. I think really the only position you need to change is probably right tackle because Terrence Steele has been struggling. But he played better towards the tail end of the season, so I'm not sure if they're going to just let him go, right? But that's what I want to see. Just like I'm a Penn State guy. Everybody knows that. What do they know to do? Play hard-nosed defense and run the goddamn ball. I don't have a problem if that's the Cowboys' philosophy. I just want them to do it efficiently and effectively. Like, don't run the ball just because you want to run the ball. Like, and we criticized that during the season. They ran the ball on first down. Like when we talked about how McCarthy would run the ball on first down, it's because there was no schematic difference. It was just halfback dive up the middle, right to the left hash. That's every fucking time that I would watch him run on first down. I would hope that Brian Schottenheimer would be more dynamic with that. That's what we've been called for, Chris, is a more dynamic offense. Like, think about it, right? People talk about like, oh, well, Rico Dowdle would do fantastic behind the Eagles O-line. Yeah, sure. I'm not discrediting that. I mean, he did great given our situation. But we need a guy that is like a Jahmyr Gibbs, a Saquon Barkley, someone that can give juice to this offense. And that is the thing. Like, we don't want 25-yard games. We want 60-plus yard rushing touchdowns. We want that dynamic back here. And again, I'm a big pass on first down guy. That's just what statistics show you. But I want to be very clear, too. If the Cowboys want this to be 90s football or what is Cowboys football, bro, Cowboys football has been, for the most part, run the fucking ball. And unfortunately, they can't play defense because that's that's what we've seen before. But that's what I want. Like, dude, just give me, like, if he came out today, and I'm sorry to go on and on, but this is a huge point. They just need to figure out what the hell they want to do. If Brian Schottenheimer said, I want to do what my dad did, run the ball, play hard-nosed defense, I'm not complaining.